Thank you, Srinivas Garu, for inviting us. Thank you, Ando-san, for joining us. Principal Secretary Jayesh Ranjan, Jubilee Hills MLA Maganti Gopinath Garu, TSI CMD Narasimha Reddy Garu, to all the distinguished gentlemen in the gathering that I know, Sudhir Reddy Garu, Bhaskar Reddy Garu, Eram Raju Garu, and there's plenty of other champions and doyens of the industry, Hyderabad and Telangana industry. My compliments to all of you and also to my friends from the media. This is indeed an excellent occasion to celebrate, and that's the reason why we wanted to make it happen sooner, Srinivas Garu, because the world at large and especially post-pandemic, all of us need more and more infusion of positive news and good news. So DAIFUKU coming to Telangana and setting up a brand new factory with 450 crores of investment, providing employment to 800 people, 800 plus people, was indeed something that we wanted to celebrate. So my compliments to you, the entire team of DAIFUKU, on choosing. You made the right choice, I can tell you. You've chosen Telangana and Hyderabad, you've made the right choice. But just a couple of things. The Srinivas Garu seems to be a huge champion of the manufacturing piece, manufacturing ecosystem. I think there's plenty of industrialists in the audience who also are champions of manufacturing ecosystem. Before I came here, I had a meeting with the new US Consul General who's come to Hyderabad, Jennifer Larson. So she asked me a very interesting question. She said, what do you think about manufacturing? What do you think about services? What do you think about the primary sector? And as an industries minister, you need to obviously give me your perspective, your state's perspective, and how do you see this landscape changing over the next few years, next few decades? So one of the things I told her, whoever I meet, wherever I meet, whichever industrialist, whichever potential investor that I meet, they have a renewed enthusiasm towards setting up a manufacturing base in India. Especially post the pandemic, post-COVID, where the world has realized that there is too much dependence on China for everything, for bulk drugs, for medical supplies, for everything literally. And when the supply chain was disrupted, I think every single industrialist, be it small, micro, medium or large, was affected in one way or another. So the world has started really thinking about this excessive reliance and excessive dependence on China. You talk to the biggest of the biggest players, the Fortune 500 companies or even the smallest of players, they all tell me the same thing. They all tell you that there has to be a China plus one strategy. You can manufacture in China for China, but for the rest of the world needs, we need to start looking at other bases. Now, because we are similar in terms of our sizes, China and India, 1.4 billion people, 1.4 billion people. So in terms of the workforce, in terms of think force, people will draw that oversimplified comparison and say, if we are moving away from China, a logical thing to go to, logical place to go to would be India. But when a lot of overseas investors, be it Japanese or Americans or Europeans, they ask me, if China is able to do a few things in a certain way, why can't India do it? I only tell them one thing. China is a country which is very homogeneous, which is very unique in terms of how it is structured, in terms of how it is controlled, in terms of how it is administered. But India is very different. India is a democracy to begin with. India is not one, but there are 28 different Indias, if you ask me, because of the federal structure we have. Each state is so uniquely empowered. The makers of our constitution had envisioned India as a union of states. So therefore, each state, and especially the gateway that you choose to enter India through, will determine your impression of India, will determine how easy you find doing business in India. That's the general thought I leave with any of my potential investor. Having said that, when I travel and when I visit countries like the US, Japan and other large economies, I was never more impressed than I was with Japan. When I was in Japan, and going back to what Srinivas Garu was saying, one of the things that struck me, besides everything that is nice about Japan, the clean streets, the beautiful landscape, etc., etc., the one thing that stood out in my memory, we had a meeting scheduled with the chairman of Suzuki, Osamu Suzuki-san. So we traveled all the way to Hamamatsu from Tokyo. We took a nice bullet train. We were there in 1.5 hours. And we were ahead of time, because I know the Japanese are sticklers for time. They're very punctual, right? So I said, I don't want to take chances. I'm meeting a big man, trying to bring him to India, to my state rather. So I was there ahead of time. I was there almost 1 hour ahead of time. Me, Jayesh, my entire team was there. So what we were told was, because we reached ahead of time, they said, he's in a board meeting. Why don't you actually go visit the Suzuki Museum? I'm actually not a big fan of museums. I said, okay, whatever. I mean, to kill time, I'll go there, spend some time and come back. So we went into the Suzuki Museum. We were going around. Actually, when I ended up there, it was fascinating. When was the first Suzuki automobile made? When did this happen? When did that happen? It was very, very unique, very, very uniquely positioned, that museum. And I even found one of Chiranjeevi Garu's pictures there. That's a different story. I'll save it for another day. But we were going through the museum. What I found, to my amusement, and which I thought was very intriguing, was there were a bunch of, I would say, 7 or 8 year old boys and girls from a school, all in school uniforms, going around the entire museum. I said, this is interesting. I mean, a grown adult like me, I might find this interesting, but what would this be of interest to any of these young kids, especially those in 2nd grade or 3rd grade? Why would this be of any interest to them? So I asked one of my Japanese friends there, I said, what are they doing here? What are the little kids doing here? He said, watch what they're doing. What they've been doing there is, which was so amazing later on when I realized, they actually were, of course, given the tour of the place, shown automobiles and how automobile evolution happened in Suzuki, etc., etc. Then later on, they were led to a kiosk. A kiosk, like the vending machine that we have for soda and other snacks. Typically, that you'd run into in a hotel lobby or in your office. There was one such vending machine where the kid could go and pick the color of the vehicle, the make of the vehicle, customize it, and then click a few buttons, and out would come a car with the kid's name on it, with the specific model he wanted, with the specific thing he wanted. I said, so what is the lesson you're trying to, impart to these kids here? He said, my Japanese friend said, design thinking, engineering from a very early age. We need to tell our kids that manufacturing really holds the key to the growth of the world, to the expansion of your thinking, and to the expansion of your abilities, because the world cannot do without, we are all seated on furniture here. I'm speaking in a mic. Each of this is manufactured somewhere in the world. Each of this is designed in a certain way. So what they're trying to inculcate in those young kids is design thinking from a very early age, and also that importance that needs to be given to the manufacturing sector. Each of us, when we go back home, or even if you look around here, there's plenty of Japanese products, there's plenty of Korean products in your living room. Please go back and when you go back home today, please look around. There is a Sony television, there is a Panasonic air conditioner, there is a Toyota vehicle possibly you're running, or a Honda. There is a Samsung phone that you may be using. There is a LG refrigerator possibly in your home. The point I'm trying to make is, what I admire about a country like Japan and companies like DAIFUKU is the amazing tenacity, the amazing resilience they've shown over the last few decades. Remember, Japan was the only nation in the world which had experienced the most tragic and most devastating atomic explosion, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In spite of that, despite earthquakes, despite tsunamis, despite natural contours which are against, all the forces of nature are stacked up against them. But it's the human intellect, it's the brain that the Japanese have invested in. It's the humans that the Japanese have invested in that have really propelled them to be one of the largest economies in the world. In spite of having a very small population, with all the forces of nature stacked up against them, with even incidents like the Hiroshima Nagasaki explosion, yet the Japanese today continue to rule the roost, continue to be a dominant force economically compared to the West and compared to Asia as well. Same applies to Korea. So the one thought, when Srinivas Garu says, we need to focus on manufacturing. Yes, we need to focus on manufacturing. But what I told the US Consul General is, we need to pick up the best elements from different parts of the world. India cannot, and India does not have the latitude. India does not have the luxury to grow at its own pace. You cannot miss this opportunity. You have to seize this opportunity. We are uniquely positioned now where the world is looking at different manufacturing, the world is looking at alternate manufacturing locations outside of China. If India has to latch on to this, we have to do what the US has done in the last 30 years in a span of next 10 years. We have to do what China has done in the last 25 years in the span of next 10 years. So we don't have the opportunity, or we don't really have the luxury of leapfrogging. We have to pole vault. We have to jump a few hoops. We have to cover a few bases, and we have to focus on not just high-tech manufacturing or advanced manufacturing or smart manufacturing. We have to focus on basic manufacturing. We have to ensure we also get the efficient smart manufacturing which is coming out as part of Industry 4.0, Industrial Revolution 4.0. And we also have to ensure that we instill and inculcate design thinking at the school curriculum level, at a very young age, at a school curriculum level, at basic education level, and most importantly, even in the vocational training institutes that we have, the polytechniques, the ITIs, etc., etc. We also need to ensure, in fact, I was talking to Procter & Gamble yesterday, myself, Jayesh, we had a meeting with them. Right after the meeting, when I told them that I want you to enter, and I want you to enter, they have a huge manufacturing facility here where they produce liquid detergent and a bunch of other things from Telangana. So I told them, I want you to actually tag along one of my institutes, in fact, the IIIT in Basra, where we have some brilliant youngsters. I told them, please tie up with them and please create an apprenticeship model where the kid who's studying there in engineering or +2 can actually come over, spend 6 months in your or as an intern or apprentice in your facility, in your manufacturing facility, and it's a win-win proposition for you and them, because once you like what you see, you obviously have the luxury of giving them an opportunity to work with you, and the kid also, the students also get an opportunity to learn. So we need 4 things. 1, like I said, basic design thinking at school level. At a higher education level or vocational training level, we need to ensure an apprenticeship model happens. 3, we need to compete on scale. If you want to compete with the large manufacturing countries like China, we of course need to do, we of course need to create the world's largest pharma parks, world's largest industrial parks, and through which economies of scale are bound to come. I'm delighted Sudhir Reddy Garu is doing something truly unique. With TIF and TSIAC, we are building up one of Telangana's largest industrial parks in Dandumalkapur. I'm delighted it's shaping up really well, Sudhir Anna. Thank you very much. I would wish FTCCI, I would wish CII, I would wish FICCI, I would wish the Japanese also come together and create such large parks. And going back to your point, Srinivas Garu, about how you ran out of space in Cherlapalli and Pashamailaram, we need to learn from the Japanese there as well. They have done some very smart things. Either they have gone underground in some cases, or they have even gone up vertically. So we need to also do a few of those disruptions and innovations, because land is a very luxurious commodity and it's in limited supply, unfortunately, and it's getting more and more expensive because it's a demand-supply gap, isn't it? I mean, the more the demand is, the more difficult it is going to get for a government to procure land, for you to also be able to get a piece of land at a reasonable price so that your bottom line is not affected. So my request to all the industrialists in this room here, and this might sound bad coming from the Industry Minister of Telangana, but I'll say it anyway. I liked what Srinivas said about Vega and how he started as a micro-entrepreneur, how he grew from micro to a small to a medium to a partner with now DAIFUKU. But if you really think, I was watching very carefully what DAIFUKU does in automation, in logistics. How many companies from India really have really disrupted and have become global names like DAIFUKU or like Sony or like Panasonic or like Honda or Toyota? How many of us really have come out with world-class products which can compete on a world scale? I mean, I'm even talking about the Reliances and Tatas and other big industrial houses from India. We have done well. We have been growing, of course. We're a large country. We have a large domestic market. But how many of these products that we have come out with are truly world-class? When I talk about the Japanese and the Koreans, and when I can mention so many names and say they are truly world-class, how many Indian companies are there which actually can be mentioned in the same breath? Which we talk about make in India, we talk about a lot of things. We talk about making for the world. But unfortunately, not many of these disruptions, not many of these inventions or innovations are truly world-class. I think we need to start thinking on a larger scale. We need to start being a bit more ambitious. We need to start being a bit more aggressive as well. Because one thing I've seen in the last 1 decade of being a minister, almost a decade now, is that capital is not an issue if you have an idea that can really work. Access to capital is no more a concern. There used to be a time in India when access to capital was a challenge, when the entrepreneurs were having a tough time raising money. But now, I think with the sort of government support, with the sort of capital flow that is coming in, with the world looking at us with renewed enthusiasm, Indian entrepreneurs need to make some bold moves. Indian entrepreneurs, and especially those entrepreneurs from Telangana who are sitting here, please think big. Please think aggressively. Please start thinking of products for the world, not just for India. So I welcome DAIFUKU, I welcome the entire manufacturing ecosystem here, and I am a truly strong believer that we have it in us to make world-class products. We have it in us to provide solutions for the world. So I wish you all the very best, and I'm, as the minister from Telangana, as a state representative, I'm happy to be a partner in your growth story. So I welcome DAIFUKU, I welcome the entire team here. Thank you very much. Jai Telangana, Jai Hind.